Hello, friends, and welcome back to English in Fluency. With me, your host, Alex, where we take your English skills from the classroom and bring them into the real world, making you feel confident, capable, and ready to speak. Because today is going to be a massive game changer for your listening skills, as we are tackling one of the hardest parts of learning a language, which is understanding what people really think, and more importantly, understanding why they think it. It is one thing to understand a fact, like the train leaves at 5 o'clock, but it is a completely different skill to understand an opinion. Like I feel that the train is too expensive, given the poor service, and if you can see the difference, you know that one is just information while the other involves emotions, reasoning, and personal perspective. So today, we are going to dive deep into a one-level listening practice session specifically designed to help you catch those opinions and reasons in real conversations. We are going to slow things down, break them apart, and then build them back up so you never feel lost in a discussion again. And I want you to imagine you are sitting in a cozy coffee shop with the smell of roasted beans in the air, eavesdropping on a conversation right next to you. And later, we will move to a busy office and finally a dinner party. So by the end of this video, you will understand every nuance of these chats. If you are ready to unlock a new level of fluency, take a deep breath. Get comfortable, and let us begin by talking about why opinions are difficult to catch. Because usually, when native speakers give an opinion, they do not always say the standard phrase. I think that because in textbooks, you learn to say, "I think chocolate is good." But in real life, a person might say, "Actually, to be honest, I am not a huge fan of chocolate, because it is a bit too sweet for me." Did you hear how many extra words were in that sentence, including "actually, to be honest," "a huge fan," and "a bit too," which are what we call filler words and softeners, and they are very common in B1 and B2 level conversations. So today, we are going to practice listening through those extra words to find the core message. We will be following a story today involving two friends. Let us call them Julian and Sarah, who are old friends meeting up for lunch. And they are about to discuss a topic that divides many people, which is whether it is better to work from home or work in an office. And this is a perfect topic for us, because it is full of strong opinions and clear reasons. So I want you to listen carefully to their conversation, but do not worry if you miss a few words, because we will go through it line by line afterwards. Let us set the scene where Julian has just arrived at the cafe, and he looks a little bit tired, while Sarah is already there, sipping a tea, and Julian sits down, sighs, and the conversation begins, so listen closely to the flow of their voices as Julian starts by saying that he is exhausted because the traffic was absolutely terrible this morning, and he says, "Honestly, I don't know why we still do this every day." Now let us pause right there for a second, because Julian used the word honestly at the start of his sentence, and when you hear honestly, or to be honest, it is a big signal that an opinion is coming. So he isn't just stating a fact about traffic. He is expressing a frustration with the routine of commuting. And he says he doesn't know why we do this every day, which is a rhetorical way of saying he dislikes commuting. Sarah responds to him by saying, "Well, I actually don't mind the commute, because it gives me time to listen to my podcasts." So listen to Sarah's reason, where she uses the word "actually" to signal that she is going to disagree with Julian, but she does it politely. And this is a key skill in English listening, because when you hear actually get ready for a contrasting opinion. And her reason for liking the commute is that it gives her free time for podcasts. Now let the conversation continue, as Julian looks at her and says, I get your point, but for me it feels like a waste of time. And I would much rather be working from home, so here, Julian uses a very classic B1 phrase, which is I get your point. But, and this is a signpost that tells you that he has heard Sarah. He validates her opinion, but he is about to return to his own opinion. He says, for me, it feels like a waste of time, and notice, he doesn't say, it is a waste of time. He says it feels like a waste of time, which makes his opinion softer and more personal. And using the verb feel instead of think is very common when talking about preferences. Sarah then asks him a question, asking, so are you thinking about asking your boss for remote work? And Julian replies, definitely, because I believe that I am more productive at home because there are fewer distractions. And here is the core of our lesson today, where Julian used the phrase, I believe, that followed by a reason connected by the word. Because, so he is more productive, because there are fewer distractions, and this cause and effect structure is what you need to listen for. I want to take a moment now to practice these specific phrases with you before we move on to the next part of their conversation. So I want you to speak out loud if you can, or say it in your head and repeat. After me, I get your point, but focusing on the intonation, going up on point and down on but, and now let us try the other one, saying, for me, it feels like a waste of time. One more time for me. It feels like a waste of time. Excellent, because by practicing these phrases, you are training your brain to recognize them instantly when you hear them in the wild. So when you hear for me, you know an opinion is coming. And when you hear, because you know a reason is coming, which sounds simple, but in fast speech, these words can get lost if you are not paying attention. Let us go back to Julian and Sarah, where Sarah has just heard that Julian wants to work from home, and now she is going to offer her own perspective, which is quite different. So Sarah says, I understand that, but personally, I find working from home a bit lonely, and I miss the office banter. Let us analyze this where Sarah uses the word personally, which is one of the best words to listen for, because it puts a big flag in the conversation that says, this is my opinion only. And she says she finds it lonely. And in this context, to find something means to experience it in a certain way. So she isn't searching for anything. She is judging the experience, and then she gives her reason, saying, I miss the office banter, which is a great British English word often used in B1 and B2 contexts, meaning the playful, friendly conversation you have with colleagues. So Sarah's opinion is that home is lonely, and her reason is the lack of social interaction. Julian reacts to this by laughing and says, really, I find the office noise distracting, and I can't focus when people are talking loudly on the phone. So look at how they are using the same structure, but with different vocabulary, where Sarah finds home lonely, and Julian finds the office distracting. So they are trading opinions, and Julian supports his opinion with a very specific reason that he cannot focus. When people are talking loudly and listening for these specific details is what moves you from an A2 learner to a B1 learner. An A2 learner understands that Julian doesn't like the office, but a B1 learner understands that Julian doesn't like the office specifically because loud phone conversations break his focus, and that detail is crucial. Now, let us imagine the conversation shifts slightly and they stop talking about work and start talking about something else, maybe food, since they are at a cafe, which is a chance for us to see how opinions work in a different context. Sarah looks at the menu and says, "Oh, have you tried the carrot cake here? It is supposed to be amazing." And Julian makes a face and says, "I am not really into carrot cake. I prefer chocolate." Sarah asks, "Why saying it is healthy? Because it has vegetables." And she is joking, of course. But Julian replies, "I just don't like the texture of cooked carrots in a cake. It is weird to me." Let us break this down, because Julian uses the phrase, "I am not really into," which is a fantastic natural way to say you don't like something, and it is much softer than saying, "I hate carrot cake." So if you are listening to a native speaker, they will often use phrases like, "I am not into it," or "It is not my thing," which mean, "I don't like it." Julian's reason is the texture, and he explains further by saying, "It is weird to me," and notice the tag "to me," which emphasizes that he knows it is subjective. So he isn't saying carrot cake is objectively bad, just that it is bad for him. We have now seen two distinct exchanges, one about serious work topics and one about casual food preferences. And in both cases, the structure was similar, with an opening phrase to signal the opinion, such as "personally, honestly," or "I find," followed by the opinion itself, and then a connecting word like "because," "since," or simply a pause, and finally the reason. I want to focus on the connecting words for a moment, because in formal writing we use "therefore" and "consequently," but in real conversations like the one between Julian and Sarah, we often just drop the connector or use very simple ones. For example, when Julian said, "I can't focus," when people are talking, the word "when" acts as the connector here, explaining the timing of his problem. Sometimes people use "so," like Sarah might say, "I get lonely at home, so I prefer the office," where the reason comes first, and the opinion or decision comes second, and you need to be able to listen for this reverse structure too. Let us try a listening exercise where I am going to describe a situation, and I want you to predict what kind of opinion phrase might be used. So imagine you are talking about a movie you just saw that was very long and boring, and your friend asks you, "How was the movie?" And you don't want to be rude, but you want to be honest. So you might start your sentence with, "To be honest," or actually saying, "To be honest, it was a bit too long for me." Now imagine you are talking about a political topic or something serious. You might use a stronger phrase like "in my view," or "I strongly believe." So the context changes the vocabulary. And in our story with Julian and Sarah, they are close friends, so their language is casual, using "I feel," "I find," and "I am not into," rather than formal phrases like "in my humble estimation." Now let us return to our friends who have ordered their food, where Julian got the chocolate cake and Sarah got the carrot cake, and they are eating, and the conversation turns to their weekend plans. Sarah says, "I am thinking of going hiking this weekend because the weather is supposed to be nice." And Julian responds, "Oh, good for you. I am planning to just stay in and play video games because I have had such a busy week that I just need to crash." Sarah laughs and says, "I don't blame you, but don't you think you should get some fresh air? It helps with stress." And Julian pauses and says, "Maybe, but right now resting my legs sounds better than using them." This is a complex little exchange, so let us peel back the layers, because Sarah offers an opinion in the form of a suggestion, asking, "Don't you think you should get some fresh air?" which is a negative question, meaning she isn't really asking, She is giving advice, saying, I think you should get fresh air, and her reason is, it helps with stress. Julian disagrees with her suggestion using a specific technique called partial agreement, or deflection, saying, maybe, which acknowledges her point, but then follows up with his own preference, that resting my legs sounds better. And the phrase sounds better is an opinion phrase based on immediate feeling. I want to pause the story for a second to talk about the emotion behind these words, because when you are listening to English, you cannot just listen to the definitions, you have to listen to the tone. So when Sarah said, "Don't you think you should get some fresh air?" If her voice went down at the end, she might sound critical or bossy. But if her voice goes up, she sounds caring and suggestive. And in this case, because they are friends, her tone is light. When Julian says, maybe if he says it quickly, he is dismissing her. But if he says it slowly, like, maybe he is considering it, and in this specific conversation, Julian is tired, so he probably said it with a sigh. So listening for these sighs, laughs, and pauses is part of understanding the opinion. Because if someone laughs before giving an opinion, they usually mean to soften the blow or keep things light. While if someone sighs, they might be expressing frustration or resignation. Let us go deeper into the grammar of reasons, because we often use the word since as a synonym for because, so Sarah could have said, since the weather is nice, I am going hiking, or she could use as saying, as I have had a busy week, I need to rest. And B1 learners should start trying to catch these synonyms, because if you only listen for because you will miss 50% of the reasons people give. Let us practice this, where I will give you a sentence with because, and I want you to mentally change it to since. So here is the sentence. I am going to bed early because I am tired. And you should have thought, since I am tired, I am going to bed early, or I am going to bed early since I am tired. Let us try another one saying, I prefer tea because coffee is too strong. So change it to, since coffee is too strong, I prefer tea, because catching this word, since at the beginning of a sentence tells you that the reason is coming first, which prepares your brain to wait for the main point at the end of the sentence. Back to the cafe where Julian and Sarah are finishing up, having discussed work, food, and weekend plans, and now they are discussing paying the bill, which is always a culturally interesting moment that involves opinions on etiquette. Julian reaches for the check, and Sarah says, no, let us split it. I insist, but Julian says, no, I invited you. I think it is only right that I pay. Sarah replies, that is sweet, but you paid last time. And I feel bad if you always pay. So let us just go 50-50. And Julian hesitates, and then says, okay, fair enough. Let us look at the arguments here, where Julian's opinion is that he should pay, and his reason is, I invited you, while Sarah's opinion is that they should split it, and her reason is, you paid last time, and I feel bad. And the resolution comes with the phrase fair enough, which is a beautiful phrase for B1 learners, meaning I accept your reason and I agree to your proposal. It is a phrase of concession. So if you are in an argument or a discussion and the other person makes a good point, you can simply say, fair enough, which stops the argument and shows you are reasonable. So we have tracked an entire conversation from the moment they sat down to the moment they paid the bill, and we have seen opinions on traffic, remote work, cake hiking, and money, and in every single instance the pattern was there with a signal phrase, the opinion and the reason, and sometimes the reason was simple, Sometimes it was complex, and sometimes the opinion was strong, sometimes it was soft, but the structure remained the truth of the conversation. Now I want to talk about what happens when you do not understand the reason, because sometimes you hear the opinion, for example, I don't like this city, but you miss the reason, because the person spoke too fast, or used a difficult word. So what do? Because you cannot just nod and smile, you need to ask for clarification, which is part of being an active listener. In our story, if Julian mumbled his reason for hating the commute, Sarah could have asked, "How come?" Or, "What makes you say that?" And these are three magic words. What makes you say that? Because it invites the person to repeat their reason, usually in simpler terms. So if you are in a conversation and you catch the opinion, but miss the logic, use that phrase. It will save you. Let's review the key vocabulary we have encountered in this first part of our deep dive, where we have discussed signal words like honestly, to be honest, actually, and personally, and we have looked at verbs of opinion like I feel, I find, I believe, and I reckon, and we haven't used I reckon yet in the story, but it is very common in British and Australian English, similar to I think. We have also looked at agree in and disagree in phrases like I get your point, but I see what you mean, and fair enough. And finally, we looked at phrases for preferences like I am not really into it, is not my thing, and I prefer, which are your tools, and the building blocks of understanding. I want you to imagine you are Julian sitting there, tired, and wanting to go home. So how would you express that using the tools we just learned? Because you wouldn't just say, I want to go. You might say, to be honest, I am feeling a bit wiped out. I think I am going to head home since I have an early start tomorrow. And look at how much more natural that sounds. You used a softener, to be honest. A feeling wiped out a decision, head home, and a reason with a connector. Since I have an early start, and this is the level of fluency we are aiming for because it flows, has rhythm, and has logic. Moving forward, I want you to keep the image of the coffee shop in your mind. But now, we are going to transport ourselves to a meeting room where the atmosphere is different. The air is cooler. There is a whiteboard on the wall, and the language is about to get sharper, more precise and structured, because this is where your English listening really gets tested, and where it really grows. We are going to meet two new characters, Mark and Elena, who are working on a group project together, and they have to decide on a topic for a presentation they are giving next week. So this scenario is perfect for us, because it forces the characters to use the language of suggestion, agreement, disagreement, and persuasion, meaning their opinions have a goal. Let us listen in as Mark is standing at a whiteboard with a marker in his hand, and Elena is sitting at the table with her laptop open, and Mark starts the conversation saying, "Okay, so for our presentation on modern technology, I was thinking we should focus on artificial intelligence. It is the most relevant topic right now." Let us pause and analyze Mark's opening, where he uses the phrase, "I was thinking we should," which is a classic way to put an idea on the table without sounding too aggressive, and it is past continuous tense. I was thinking, which makes it sound like a suggestion he has been considering rather than a sudden demand, and his reason is clear that it is the most relevant topic right now, using the adjective relevant, which is a great be one word, meaning connected to what is happening today. Elena looks up from her laptop, pauses for a second thinking, and says, "That is a good idea, Mark. but I am a bit worried that everyone else will choose AI. It might be too common. I reckon we should do something different, like renewable energy technology. Listen to Elena's counterargument, because she starts with validation saying, "That is a good idea," which is crucial in professional or academic settings where you rarely just say, "No," you validate first, then comes the transition. But I am a bit worried that her reason for rejecting AI is that it is too common. She wants to stand out. And then she gives her own opinion, using, I reckon, which, as I mentioned earlier, is very common in the UK and Australia, simply meaning, I think. And her suggestion is renewable energy. Mark taps the marker on the board and says, I see what you mean. However, renewable energy is a huge topic. It might be too difficult to cover in just 10 minutes. AI is easier to narrow down. And here, we see a slightly more formal connecting word. However, in the coffee shop, Julian used, but while in the meeting room, Mark uses however, which serves the same function to introduce a contrast, but it sounds a bit more thoughtful. And Mark's reason for rejecting renewable energy is practical, that it is too difficult to cover, because he is thinking about the constraints of the assignment. Elena nods and says, "True. That is a valid point. Okay, what if we focus on a specific part of renewable energy? For instance, solar panels for regular houses, that way, it is not too broad." And Elena uses the phrase "that is a valid point," which is an excellent phrase for you to learn, meaning your reason makes sense, your logic is sound. She then uses the phrase "what if" to introduce a compromise, and what if is one of the most useful structures for problem solving, because it invites the other person to imagine a scenario. And she also uses "for instance" instead of "for example," which are interchangeable, but using "for instance" shows a slightly wider vocabulary range. Mark thinks about it, smiles, and says, "Actually, I like the sound of that. It is practical and specific. Plus, there is a lot of data available on it." So Mark agrees, using the phrase, "I like the sound of that," which means he likes the idea. And he adds an extra reason, using the word "plus," which is a great informal way to add a second reason, so reason 1 is it is practical. And reason 2 using "plus" is there is data available. Now let us step out of the room for a moment and look at the mechanics of what just happened. Because this conversation was a negotiation that went like this: proposal A leading to rejection with reason, leading to proposal B, leading to rejection with reason, leading to compromise, proposal, leading to agreement. And if you can follow this structure, you can follow almost any workplace meeting. The key is to listen for the buts and the howevers and the what-ifs, because these are the steering wheels of the conversation that turn the topic in new directions. I want to focus on the phrase, "I am a bit worried," that which Elena used, because when someone says they are worried about an idea, they are expressing an opinion that the idea has a flaw, identifying a problem, and other ways to say, "This are my main concern is," or "the issue with that is." So if you hear the issue, is pay close attention, because the speaker is about to point out a negative aspect. For example, the issue with AI is that it is too complex, or the issue with this restaurant is that it is too expensive, which is a negative opinion disguised as a factual observation. Let's practice some signposting words, which are words that tell you where the conversation is going, because we have already seen, but and because. So let's look at "in addition." And on the other hand, imagine Mark wants to give another reason to support AI. He might say, AI is popular. In addition, it is changing rapidly, where in addition tells you, here comes another reason. And now imagine Elena wants to compare two things. She might say, AI is exciting. On the other hand, green energy is more important for the planet, where on the other hand tells you here comes a contrast or an opposite perspective. B1 learners often get stuck using and but all the time. So if you can start hearing in addition, plus, also, however, and on the other hand, your listening comprehension will skyrocket because you will know exactly how the ideas connect. Let us go back to Mark and Elena, who have agreed on the topic of solar panels and now need to decide how to present it. So Mark says, in my opinion, we should make a PowerPoint. It is classic, and everyone expects it. But Elena sighs and says, I don't know, Mark, PowerPoint can be a bit boring. I feel that we should try something interactive, maybe a video or a quiz. Mark looks doubtful and says, I am not sure about that. A video takes a long time to edit, and we only have 2 days due to our tight deadline. I think we should stick to slides. And there is a new phrase here due to where Mark says, due to our tight deadline, meaning because of. It is slightly more formal, and you will hear this a lot in announcements, like due to bad weather, the train is delayed, and in conversation it explains the cause of a problem or a decision. So Mark's decision to stick to slides is caused by the deadline. Elena listens to this practical reason and knows he is right about the time. So she says, you are right. I didn't think about the editing time. Okay, let us do slides, but let us make them very visual so they aren't boring. And Mark says, agreed. That sounds like a plan. Here Elena admits defeat, but she does it gracefully, saying, you are right. And then she explains why she changed her mind, saying, I didn't think about the editing time, which is a very human moment, because people change their opinions based on new information. And as a listener, you need to track this change. If you stopped listening after Elena said, we should try a video, you would think they are making a video. But because you listened to the end, you know they are making slides, so you have to listen for the resolution. And the phrase that sounds like a plan is a classic English idiom used to confirm a final decision. Meaning, we have an agreement. Let us do it. Let's do a little simulation where I am going to play the role of a colleague, and I am going to give you an opinion with a reason. And I want you to decide if you agree or disagree, and think of a reason why. Here is my statement. I think we should cancel the office party this year. It costs too much money, and nobody really enjoys it. So, do you agree? Because if yes, you might think I agree. I would rather have a bonus than a party. Or do you disagree? Because if no, you might think I disagree. The party is good for team bonding. Now, how would you say that to me? You could say, I see your point about the money, but I feel the party is important for morale. Or I am with you on that the money could be spent better elsewhere. And I am with you on that is a fantastic phrase for strong agreement, meaning I am standing by your side on this issue. Now, let us look at the emotional undertone of these professional conversations, because Mark and Elena are polite, using softeners, like a bit worried or I am not sure, and they do not say, that is a stupid idea. They say, I am not sure about that. In English-speaking cultures especially, in the UK, US, and Canada, direct disagreement can be seen as rude. So we wrap our disagreement in soft words, which we call hedging. So if you hear someone say, I suppose we could do that, but they are telling you they don't want to do it, because the word suppose indicates weak agreement, meaning they are saying yes, but their heart is saying no. So watch out for these weak yeses, because they often lead to a no later in the conversation. Let us advance the story of Mark and Elena one more step, where they are discussing who will do what work. And Mark says, I am happy to do the research, since I enjoy reading the articles, and Elena says, great. In that case, I will design the slides, because I am better at graphic design. Look at the connectors here, where since as a reason leads to the task, and because as a reason leads to the task, and the phrase in that case links Mark's offer to Elena's action, meaning, if that is the situation, then I will do this, showing a logical flow that if Mark does X, then Elena does Y, and following the logic of who is doing what is the ultimate test of listening in a planning conversation. We have analyzed the structure of negotiation, including suggestion, counter-suggestion, reason, and agreement, and we have looked at formal connectors like however and due to, as well as soft disagreement or hedging. Now, I want to talk about the speed of speech, because in a meeting like this, people might speak faster than in a coffee shop because they are excited or stressed. So when people speak fast, they tend to swallow small words. So I think that we should becomes, I think we should, and do you want to becomes, do you wanna, so you need to focus on the stressed words. In the sentence, I think we should focus on A, I. The stressed words are think, focus, and A, I. And if you only hear those three words, you understand the sentence, think, focus, A, I, so you can reconstruct the rest. And this is a vital strategy. So don't try to catch every preposition, catch the nouns and the verbs, because the content words carry the meaning, while the grammar words just hold them together. Let us take a moment to breathe, because we have been in the meeting room for a while, and the air is getting stuffy. So let us imagine Mark and Elena finish their meeting, pack up their bags, and Mark says, right, I am off. Thanks for being so flexible. Elena? And Elena smiles, saying, no worries. I think it is going to be a good presentation. I am off is a casual way to say, I am leaving. And thanks for being flexible is a compliment on her willingness to change her opinion, while no worries is the universal response to thank you in modern English. So what is the takeaway from this part? Because the takeaway is that opinions in a task-based conversation are tools to reach a goal, and the reasons are the weights that tip the scale one way or another. So Mark's reason, which was the deadline, was heavier than Elena's reason, which was that video is fun. So the scale tipped to Mark's side. And when you listen, you are weighing these reasons in your mind, judging which argument won. But before we go to the next part, I want you to do a little homework assignment in your head right now, thinking about your job or your studies, and thinking of one thing you would like to change. Maybe you want shorter meetings or different hours. So now, formulate the opinion and the reason. I think we should have shorter meetings because, or I believe we need different hours due to, and say it to yourself, making it real, because by connecting these lessons to your real life, you make the neural pathways in your brain stronger, and you are not just learning English, you are living it. Okay, are you ready for the final challenge? Because we are going to leave the university and go to a dinner party, a place where friends, perhaps with a glass of wine or juice, discuss the state of the world, and the language will be rich, emotional, and complex, which is the B1B2 bridge, so let us cross it together. The characters for this final story are David and Priya, who are sitting at a dinner table with a group of friends where the plates are empty, the dessert is finished, and the conversation is moving toward deeper, more philosophical topics. discussing the impact of social media on society, which is a topic everyone has an opinion on, and the reasons can be very complex. This type of conversation is what we call abstract meaning. We aren't talking about cakes or slides. We are talking about happiness, connection, and mental health. So this requires a slightly different set of listening skills, where you need to follow chains of thought. Let us listen as David leans forward, resting his elbows on the table, and says, "You know, I have been thinking a lot about deleting my social media accounts. I feel like it just makes everyone anxious. We are constantly comparing our lives to other people's highlight reels." Let us unpack David's opening statement where he uses the phrase, "I have been thinking a lot about," which signals a deep considered opinion, not just a sudden thought. And his opinion is that social media makes people anxious while his reason is complex. That we are constantly comparing our lives using the metaphor highlight reels, which in sports shows only the best moments. So David is saying that on social media, we only see the best parts of people's lives, not the reality. And this comparison is the reason for the anxiety. Priya listens carefully and doesn't interrupt. And when he finishes, she nods slowly and says, "I totally see where you are coming from. David, the pressure to be perfect is real. But looking at it from another angle, social media is also a lifeline for many people. It allows us to stay connected with family who live far away without it. I would feel so isolated." Priya uses a beautiful phrase, "I totally see where you are coming from," which is an advanced way of saying I understand your reason, and she validates his feelings about pressure. Then she uses the transition, but looking at it from another angle, which tells the listener she is about to flip the object over and look at the positive side. Her opinion is that it is a lifeline, meaning a source of safety or help, and her reason is keeping in touch with distant family, while her supporting feeling is that without it, she would feel isolated. David responds, "That is true. I admit that it has benefits for communication. However, my argument is that the cost is too high. We are losing the ability to have real conversations because we are always looking at screens. Even now, look around the restaurant. Half the people are on their phones." David uses the phrase, "I admit that," which is a concession, meaning he agrees with Priya's point about family, but he returns to his main point with, "However, my argument is that," which is a very strong, clear way to label your opinion, because he isn't just feeling, he is arguing. His new reason is we are losing the ability to have real conversations, and he gives evidence saying, "Look around the restaurant." So using real-world evidence to support an opinion is a common tactic in debates. Priya smiles and says, "I suppose so, but I think it depends on how you use it. If you use it mindlessly, yes, it is bad, but if you use it with intention, it is a powerful tool. So I don't think the problem is the technology. I think the problem is our habits." This is a sophisticated distinction, where Priya uses the phrase, "it depends on," which is the golden phrase of intermediate and advanced English, meaning nothing is 100% black or white. She introduces a condition, if you use it mindlessly versus if you use it with intention, and she is refining the argument, disagreeing with David's conclusion to delete social media by separating the tool from the user, suggesting the technology is okay, but the habits are bad. Listen to how the conversation flows like a tennis match, where David serves a negative point, Priya returns with a positive point. David concedes but hits back with a societal cost. And Priya refines the shot by focusing on personal responsibility. So to follow this, you cannot just listen to one sentence. You have to remember what David said 2 turns ago to understand what Priya is saying now, which is following the thread of the conversation. Let us focus on the vocabulary of agreement and disagreement in this deeper context, because if you agree strongly, you can say you have hit the nail on the head, meaning you are exactly right. Or if you are skeptical, you can say, I am not fully convinced by that. Or if you want to add to their point, you can say, to add to what you said. Or building on that. Or if you want to challenge them politely, you can say, don't you think that? Or, but what about? In the story, David says you make a valid point about habits. But realistically, can most people control their habits? These apps are designed to be addictive. And David challenges Priya's personal responsibility argument using the word realistically, which signals that he thinks Priya's idea is too idealistic or optimistic, bringing the conversation back to hard facts, with his reason that the apps are designed to be addictive. Priya sighs and says, you have a point there. It is an uphill battle. Maybe the answer isn't deleting it, but strictly limiting it. Like no phones at the dinner table, so Priya accepts the challenge, saying, you have a point there. And she compromises, moving from it is a great tool to we need strict limits. And the conversation ends with a shared solution of no phones at the dinner table, meaning they found a middle ground. This is the holy grail of listening practice. Understanding how 2 people with different starting points, like delete it versus keep it, move towards a shared conclusion, like limit it. And this movement happens through the exchange of reasons, where David's reason of addiction influenced Priya, and Priya's reason of connection influenced David. So if you were asked to summarize this conversation, you wouldn't say they talked about phones. You would say David wanted to delete social media because of anxiety. But Priya argued it was good for connection. So eventually they agreed that limiting usage was the best solution. And that is a B1, B2 summary that captures the opinions, the reasons, and the resolution. Now I want to address the emotional intelligence required for listening, because when people talk about deep topics like this, they often use emphasis to show how much they care. So they might stress words like really so, and constantly saying, I feel so isolated, or we are constantly comparing. And these intensifying adverbs are clues to the speaker's emotional state, because if David says, it is kind of annoying, he is a little bothered. But if he says it is absolutely infuriating, he is angry. So listening for these degrees of emotion helps you understand the strength of the opinion. Let's do a final practice drill called Identify the Function, where I will read a phrase from our stories, and I want you to identify if it is an opinion, a reason, an agreement, or a disagreement. So number 1, it feels like a waste of time, which is an opinion. Number 2, due to the tight deadline, which is a reason. Number 3, I see where you are coming from, which is an agreement or validation. Number 4, on the other hand, which is a disagreement or contrast. Number 5, personally, I find it lonely, which is an opinion. And number 6, since I enjoy reading articles, which is a reason. So, did you get them all? Because if you did, your brain is now categorizing these words automatically. And that is the goal. So you stop struggling to translate and start categorizing functions. We have covered a massive amount of material today, starting with the basics of I think, and because, then moving to the nuance of I reckon, and however, and finishing with the complexity of it depends. And realistically, and you have listened to Julian and Sarah discuss life choices, listen to Mark and Elena manage a project, and listen to David and Priya debate society. And these three conversations represent 90% of the types of discussions you will have in English, from casual to professional to philosophical. So what is the next step for you, and how do you take this lesson and make it permanent? Because here is my call to action for you. I want you to become an eavesdropper. So this week, I want you to listen to a podcast, watch a YouTube video, or listen to people talking in a movie. But don't just listen for the story. I want you to hunt for the opinions. So take a piece of paper, draw 2 columns with left column being opinion and right column being reason. When you hear the character say, "I hate this town," write it in the left column, then wait for the reason, because nothing ever happens here, and write that in the right column, and do this for 5 minutes a day, because you will be amazed at how much you miss when you aren't looking for it, and how much you catch when you are. Also, try to use these phrases in your own speech, so the next time someone asks you, "How are you?" don't just say, "Fine," say, "To be honest, I am feeling great, because I finally finished a big project." So give an opinion and a reason, and expand your world. Because learning a language is not just about memorizing words, it is about learning to think in new ways. By understanding how others build their arguments, you learn to build your own, and you become a better thinker, a better listener, and a better friend. So thank you so much for joining me, Alex, on this long journey through the landscape of English conversation, because you have stuck with me for a long time today, and that shows your dedication, and that dedication is the reason you will succeed. So remember, fluency is not a destination, it is a journey, and today you took a giant leap forward. So keep practicing, keep listening, and most importantly, keep speaking your truth. But we are not done yet, because I know that to really master this level of listening, you need to see these skills applied in the places where they matter most, which are inside your home and inside your wallet. We have looked at the office and the dinner party, but what happens when the conversation is between a husband and wife, planning a holiday, or a customer and a salesperson negotiating a price? Because these are the moments where opinions have direct consequences on your life and your bank account. So we are going to extend our session today to include these high-stakes scenarios. We are going to push your listening endurance even further, because in the real world, you do not get to take a break after 10 minutes. You have to keep listening even when you are tired. So let us take a deep breath, shake out any tension, and dive into our next story, which features a couple named Tom and Lisa. Tom and Lisa are sitting at their kitchen table on a rainy Tuesday evening with a laptop open in front of them, and they are trying to book their summer vacation, which is a classic conflict scenario because usually one person wants to relax and the other person wants to explore, and listening to how they navigate this difference is a masterclass in understanding the phrase, "I was hoping." Listen closely as Tom rubs his eyes and starts the conversation saying, "Look, Lisa, I know you want to go to Italy, but honestly, I am just so exhausted from work that the idea of walking around museums all day sounds like a nightmare to me. I was really hoping we could just go to a beach resort in Spain and do absolutely nothing for a week." Let us stop and analyze Tom's opening statement, because it is rich with emotional data. So he starts with a softener. "Look, Lisa," which signals he is about to say something she might not like. And his opinion is that Italy sounds like a nightmare, which is a very strong exaggeration used to show how tired he is. While his reason is explicit, that I am just so exhausted from work. Then he uses the key phrase, "I was really hoping," which is the grammar of unfulfilled desire. Because when you hear, I was hoping, it means I have a strong preference, but I know it might not happen. So it is a vulnerable way to give an opinion. And he wants a beach resort, and his reason is implied by the phrase, do absolutely nothing, meaning he needs rest, not stimulation. Lisa looks at him, and she feels a bit disappointed. But she listens to his reason, saying, I get that Tom and I know you have had a brutal quarter at work. But for me, lying on a beach for 7 days feels a bit boring. I feel like we waste our money if we go somewhere and don't see the culture. However, I am willing to compromise. What if we go to a place in Italy that is near the beach so you can relax and I can take a day trip to the city? Lisa's response is a perfect example of the yes but structure we practiced earlier, but with a domestic twist, because she validates his feeling, saying, I know you have had a brutal quarter, where brutal is a great B1, B2 adjective for very hard or difficult. And her opinion is that the beach is boring, while her reason is financial value, saying, I feel like we waste our money if we don't see culture, which is a common clash of rest versus value. But then she uses the magic word compromise and suggests a third option using the structure, so that to explain the benefit for both of them, a place near the beach so you can relax and I can take a day trip. Tom thinks about this, sighs and says, that sounds fair, actually. As long as I don't have to wake up early, I am happy. I just don't want a schedule. If you want to go explore, that is fine, but I want the freedom to just sleep in. And Lisa smiles and says, deal, I will do the planning, and you can do the sleeping. This resolution was fast, but only because they listened to the core needs, where Tom's need was no schedule, meaning rest, and Lisa's need was culture, meaning activity, so they found a way to have both. And as a listener, you need to identify the deal breaker, which is the one thing the person will not change. So for Tom, the deal breaker was waking up early, and once Lisa accepted that the conflict ended. So in your own listening practice, try to identify the deal breaker in every argument, asking what is the one thing the person refuses to compromise on. Now let us move from the kitchen table to a car dealership, where we are going to meet James, who is buying a used car, and the salesperson whose name is Mike, which is a negotiation where opinions are used as weapons to lower the price or raise the value. And the language is more guarded and less emotional than with Tom and Lisa. Listen to the shift in tone as James is walking around a red sedan, kicks the tires lightly, and says, well, Mike, it is a nice-looking car, but to be honest, it is a bit out of my price range. Also, I am a bit concerned about the mileage. It has over 100,000 miles on it. James is using the sandwich technique here, starting with a compliment that it is a nice-looking car. Then comes the negative opinion that it is out of my price range. Then comes the objective reason that I am concerned about the mileage. And by saying, I am concerned, instead of the mileage is bad. He sounds polite but firm, inviting Mike to solve the problem. Mike, the salesperson, nods professionally and says, I understand your concern, James. However, you have to consider that this is a Honda, and these engines are known to run for 200,000 miles easily. So in terms of price, we can discuss financing options to make the monthly payments lower. I believe this car offers the best value for money on the lot right now. Mike uses 3 powerful linking phrases here. First, using however you have to consider, that which is a way of introducing a counterfact, asking James to look at a new fact, that Honda engines are reliable. Second, using in terms of which is one of the most useful business English phrases you can learn, meaning regarding or about directing the listener's attention to a specific category, like in terms of price, and finally giving his professional opinion, saying, I believe this offers the best value. James is not fully convinced yet, and says, I see your point about the engine reliability, But my main priority is safety. Because I have a new baby on the way, does this model have the latest side airbags? Because if it doesn't, that is a deal breaker for me. There is that word again, deal breaker, because James has shifted the argument from money, meaning price, to emotion, meaning safety. And his reason is I have a new baby, which is a trump card, meaning a reason that is so strong it wins the argument because Mike cannot argue against the safety of a baby. Mike checks his clipboard and says, "Actually, yes, it does. And since safety is your priority, I should also mention it has a 5-star crash rating." So James nods slowly and says, "Okay, that makes a difference. If the safety rating is that high, I might be willing to stretch the budget a little, but I still feel the price is about $500 too high. Can you meet me in the middle?" This is the climax of the listening comprehension task, where James says, "That makes a difference," signaling a change in opinion, moving from no to maybe with the condition being the price. And he asks, "Can you meet me in the middle?" which is a classic idiom, meaning, can we split the difference in price? So if the car is $10,000 and James wants it for $9,000, meeting in the middle would be $9,500. So what have we learned from James and Mike? Because we learned to listen for the sandwich of good-bad. Reason we learned to listen for, in terms of to know what category is being discussed, and we learned to listen for the trump card, the emotional reason that overrides everything else. So when you are listening to sales conversations or business meetings, try to spot who is holding the trump card and who has the reason that cannot be argued with. Now, I want to take you to a completely different scenario, one that involves education and parenting, where we are going to listen to Anna and Ben, who are discussing which school to send their daughter to, which is a debate between academic pressure and creative freedom, and is a very common debate in many cultures. Anna says, "I really think we should send Sophie to St. Mary's Academy. Their exam results are the best in the city. I feel that if she goes there, she will have the best chance of getting into a top university. Later, it is a competitive world out there, and she needs a head start." Anna's opinion is clear, that St. Mary's is the best choice, and her reasons are future-oriented, focusing on exam results and university entrance view in education as a race and using the phrase "a head start," which means starting the race before others. Ben rubs his chin, looks worried, and says, "I know they get good results, Anna, but I am worried about the culture there. I have heard it is incredibly stressful. Sophie is a very creative child. I feel like that kind of high-pressure environment might crush her spirit. I would prefer the Steiner School, where they focus on art and individual growth." Ben validates the results, saying, "I know they get good results," but his opinion is negative, based on culture and stress, and his reason is based on Sophie's personality, that she is creative using a very strong emotional verb, phrase, crush her spirit, which means to destroy her happiness or confidence, and proposing an alternative, the Steiner School. Anna sighs and says, "I understand your fear. Ben, I don't want her to be stressed either, but my concern with the Steiner School is that it might be too relaxed. What if she doesn't learn the discipline she needs for the real world? I reckon there has to be a balance." Anna uses "my concern" is to politely disagree, framing her disagreement as a question, asking "what if," and ending with, "I reckon there has to be a balance," signaling she is ready to compromise, because she isn't fighting for stress, she is fighting for discipline. Ben says, "Okay, well, what if we look at the international school? They have good academics, but they also have a huge art department. It seems like the best of both worlds. And the best of both worlds is a phrase you should write down, because it is the ultimate solution phrase, meaning getting the advantages of option A and the advantages of option B without the disadvantages. So when you hear someone say, "It seems like the best of both worlds," they are usually proposing the winning solution. We have traveled through so many lives today involving Julian and Sarah Mark and Elena David and Priya Tom and Lisa James and Mike and now Anna and Ben. And do you see the pattern connecting all of them? Because in every single conversation, the structure of communication is the same, where an opinion is stated, a reason is given, a counter-opinion is offered, and a compromise is reached. So the names change and the topics change, but the skeleton of the language remains exactly the same. I want to pause here and talk about a specific advanced listening skill called shadowing, which is when you listen to a speaker and repeat exactly what they say, a split second after they say it, like a shadow following a body. And it is one of the most effective ways to internalize the rhythm of opinions. So I want you to try it with me right now. I am going to say a complex sentence about an opinion, and I will say it slowly, so I want you to repeat it after me. Here is the sentence. Although I see the benefits of saving money, I honestly feel that we should invest in quality because it lasts longer. Now you try. Although I see the benefits of saving money, keep going. I honestly feel that we should invest in quality. And the reason, because it lasts longer. Did you feel the rhythm? And did you feel how the pitch went up on money and down on quality? Because listening is not just about the ears. It is about the mouth. So if you can say it, you can hear it. Meaning when you are watching Netflix or listening to podcasts, try to shadow the characters. And when they give an opinion, pause and say it back, mimicking their emotion. So if they sound angry, say it angrily. And if they sound tentative, say it tentatively, which connects the sound to the feeling in your brain. We are entering the final stretch of our marathon session now, and I want to address one last challenging area, which is the job interview, and is the ultimate test of explaining reasons, because you are the topic, and you have to have opinions about yourself. So let us listen to a mock interview between Sophie, who is practicing, and her mentor, Mr. Clark. Mr. Clark asks Sophie, "So Sophie, tell me, what do you consider to be your greatest weakness?" Which is the dreaded question. And Sophie takes a breath, saying, "Well, I used to think my weakness was public speaking. I would get very nervous. However, I have been taking classes to improve it. So now I view it as a challenge rather than a weakness. I think I am still improving, but I am much more confident than before." Mr. Clark nods and says, "That is a good answer, but try to be more specific about the reason." Asking, "Why did you get nervous?" So Sophie thinks and says, "I think I was nervous because I was afraid of being judged. I felt that if I made a mistake, everyone would think I was incompetent." Mr. Clark says, "Exactly, that is the honest reason." Now flip it, asking, "Why are you better now?" And Sophie smiles, saying, "I am better now, because I realize that the audience actually wants me to succeed. They aren't waiting for me to fail. That shift in perspective changed how I feel." This dialogue is pure gold for learners, because Sophie moves from a surface opinion that I was nervous to a deep reason that I was afraid of judgment. Then she explains the cure, which was changing perspective, using the phrase "I view it as," which is a very professional way to state an opinion, like "I view this problem as an opportunity," or "I view this deadline as a motivator," making you sound objective and analytical. As we wrap up this massive session, I want to leave you with a strategy for your future learning, because we have covered 10,000 words worth of concepts today. But concepts fade if they aren't used, so I want you to create a reason diary for the next 7 days, where I want you to write down one opinion you heard and the reason attached to it. It could be from the news, like the president believes we should cut taxes because it stimulates the economy. Or it could be from your child, like he doesn't want to eat broccoli because it looks like little trees. So it doesn't matter how simple or complex it is, just catch the because. If you can train your brain to hunt for the because, you will stop getting lost in the noise of English conversation, and you will start seeing the logic behind the words, understanding not just what people are saying, but who they are. Understanding that Julian is a man who needs quiet, that Sarah is a woman who needs connection, that Tom is tired, that Lisa is curious, that James protects his family, that Anna wants success, and Ben wants happiness. Language is the map of the human heart, and listening is how we read that map. So you have spent this time with me, Alex, and I am so proud of the focus you have shown. Because listening to a long script like this is not easy. It takes stamina and it takes focus. But you did it, and you are here at the finish line. So take a moment to congratulate yourself, because you have upgraded your ears today, and you have upgraded your brain, meaning you are walking away with a toolkit full of actuallys and howevers, and I reckons, and it depends. So use them, play with them, and make them your own. This has been English in Fluency, and I am your host, Alex, and it has been my absolute privilege to guide you through the intricate, beautiful world of opinions and reasons. So keep listening, keep speaking, and never stop asking why. So thank you for watching, and until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. Goodbye.